It's an Arch production.
But so does the rotation. Olaf Maestro has been taken out towards the B bomb site, but automatic's going towards A. Nothing else is going on. He's got to go back. Stewie's on his own, but look at the time. Look at the time. There's 7 seconds to blow the bomb. They're trying to build pyramids, but there's no more play. Stewie's won the round. We're going to overtime.
And the crowd goes wild. I'm sure everyone who's watching this video at least once had a moment where the odds were all against them. Your teammates were dead, you were low HP, and your enemies were steadily approaching your location. But somehow, may it be luck or just pure skill, you managed to beat those odds and come out victorious. That moment, right there when you realized you won, got to be one of the best moments in gaming in general. Of course, those rare high moments aren't only tied to winning impossible situations. Hitting a flick you usually wouldn't, instantly shutting down that overconfident opponent, also gives you that sweet dopamine hit. And so does scoring a sick goal in Rocket League, or outsmarting that annoying jungler in League of Legends. But tell me, do you believe in equality? Not in terms of social standing, wealth, or other fancy stuff like that, but in individual skill equality. Do you believe every person is born equal? Can anyone become the best artist if they put enough time and effort into it? And does everyone scale their driving skill level at the same pace? Or are some just natural born talents? I wish I could say that anyone can achieve their dreams and become the best of the best in whatever they love. But I don't want to sweeten the blow. Some people in life are dealt a bad hand. They might have gotten to gaming way too late, are stuck in a draining 9-to-5 job, which means they can't commit all their time into their passion. Or they might have been born with a disability. Nonetheless, they have a passion for games. And the best thing to do in a game, aside from having fun with friends, is to win your 1v1s and ultimately dominate the match. This can be quite hard if you're playing against seemingly the chosen one with hyper-fast reaction time, who's glued to his gaming setup all day, and has a burning passion for the game you tend to like as well. This is going to be a hard matchup, isn't it? Well, just because you got dealt a bad hand, doesn't mean you got the losing hand. Okay, this video is split up in 3 episodes, with each dedicating a different aspect of the road to a successful gaming career. And what better part to start with than the part that requires no effort to get the advantage in. If I show you those 2 setups, put equally skilled players behind each station and have them play a 1v1 in 3 completely different games, who do you think would win? Unless you feel like being edgy, you are probably putting your money on this guy, the one with the better gaming setup. Why is because he has a faster PC, right? But how about now? Who would win if we put the same 2 guys behind a massive screen PC versus a small screen one? And between a wired and wireless mouse setup? In-ears versus over-ears? Let's get a bit more technical. 2 identical PCs, but one has more RAM and the other has an SSD instead of an HDD. Which one wins now? And if one has the better GPU and the other the better CPU? Bob, no, putting up the preference won't help you pass this test. An often overlooked part of becoming better in your favorite game is the hardware you use. May it be internal or external, they have a massive impact on your performance. So that's it. Spend a couple $1,000 and you will improve, because games are indeed paid to win. The next chapter, alright, what's... Okay, that is not how we do it here on the channel. Let's take a deep dive into what does what, the pros and cons of each option, and how your PC actually works. Let's go. Your PC or laptop consists out of 7 components: CPU, GPU, RAM, storage, motherboard, PSU, and a cooling system. Each one of those components is essential for your computer to work. But what do they do and how do they exactly impact your performance in games? Well, in short, the CPU handles all the logical things in your system. In game terms, that means physics simulations, collision detection, AI calculations, and all the other gameplay elements. Basically, if you press W and your character is supposed to move forward, your CPU will figure that out for you. What you see visually change around you when you move forwards is what the GPU handles. The GPU fixes all the graphical elements of the game. It renders 3D models, applies textures, renders shading, and so on. Simple stuff really. The next 3-letter acronym is RAM. RAM sticks are basically your CPU's best friend. What they do is temporarily grab important information from your storage drive and hold onto them so the CPU can access them easier and faster, resulting in a smooth gaming experience. For example, if you load into a Counter-Strike match on Nuke, the RAM in your system will load all the map files, textures, models, and sound files that will get used in its temporary storage unit. So when the CPU needs to figure out how your character will fall when you get killed, it looks into the loaded stuff in the RAM storage and figures that out for you. Where then the GPU will visualize how the ragdoll fabulously smacks into the ground. Ooh, nasty. RAM sticks grab their data from your storage unit, which is either an HDD or an SSD. You probably know that SSDs are faster and HDDs are cheaper. But it's also important to note that HDDs are more prone to hardware failures as opposed to SSDs. Those 4 components are basically the spearheads in your system, and together they make sure you have an enjoyable gaming experience. But what do the remaining 3 components do? They support. Your PSU is your power supplier. If your GPU needs a lot of power to run, you will need a bigger power supply unit. Your cooling system makes sure you don't toast your very expensive components. This can nowadays be done in 2 ways: water cooling and air cooling. Again, both options have pros and cons. Finally, the motherboard. You might think that this component is the most important for great performance, but in reality, it barely affects anything. The job of the motherboard is to be the brain of your computer. Not in terms of logic, which your CPU does, but by making all the parts work together. It connects the components, transfers data in between, and distributes some power so they all stay juiced up. You might be wondering, why are there so many different motherboards out there with many different scales of pricing, if the performance of your PC is barely affected by it? Well, that is because motherboards need to stay up to date with the newest hardware. Primarily the CPU often gets different designs and chipsets which need an updated motherboard to work. Meaning if you want to have the best of the best in terms of CPU, you most likely need to also buy the newest of the newest motherboard, which is really pricey. This is how your PC works internally. And now that we are all on the same wavelength in the realm of basic internals, let's talk improvement. The easy answer to spontaneously get better is to buy the best and most expensive option available for each component. But money isn't growing on trees. And especially with the current inflation, it's not always financially responsible to buy the best of the best. Does that mean the majority of us can't beat that HDHD Fortnite kid? No, gentlemen, we can still beat him. Let me tell you a secret. The max performance you need highly depends on your external gear and the game you want to improve on. If you play Counter-Strike and your monitor only supports up to 60 Hz, which means 60 frames per second displayed, there isn't really a point in spending thousands of dollars to aim for 200 FPS consistently. There is no point buying the highest end internals if you don't have the right. So, what do I mean by externals? By externals, I mean the mouse, keyboard, headphone, microphone, monitor, mousepad, and all the other things outside of your computer case, including your desk and chair. All the things you use to control and immerse yourself into the virtual world. External gear has way more impact on your performance than your internal hardware does, because externals directly convert your real-life movement and situational awareness into the game world. If you have a crappy monitor and Soviet-era headphones, it will be hard to feel like you are actually standing there. And if you have the stickiest switches known to mankind on your keyboard and a mouse that scrapes the pad every time you move it, it's impossible to fluidly control your character as you intended to. Luckily for us, there are many different options for each external. And while I do have a strong preference for some after testing each alternative out throughout the years, every person is different, and some of you might actually like a wired mouse. Yup, and let's start with mice. In theory, there's no reason ever to like a wired mouse over a wireless one. The wire adds weight, you have to compensate your force when moving in basically any direction because of the cable, and you don't get the freedom of placing your mouse wherever you like as the wire might not be long enough. Some of those self-proclaimed game journalists out there still claim having a wireless mouse means you get horrible input delay, have to charge the device often, and that wired mice are a better bang for your buck than wireless ones. But 2 of those claims are simply not true, and the third I don't agree with. Firstly, we don't live in the 90s anymore. Wireless mice used to have a lot of issues back in the day, but the future is now, old man. Input delay on a wireless mouse is non-existent. Battery life has become a standard 50 hours plus in the industry, and not to mention the weight of the mice. They have gotten extremely light, which means faster movements and less friction when dragging your mouse over your mousepad. The newest wireless mice are nearing less than 50 grams at the moment. That is extremely light. I still remember when I switched from my heavy, RGB-infested wired Razer mouse to my still in use G Pro Wireless that weighs around 80 grams. I absolutely love this mouse, and I've been using the exact same mouse for over 4 years now. And in those 4 years, used it in many LANs and national tournaments that I played in and earned MVPs in. Does that mean I think that this mouse is the best mouse you can buy? No. People get used to the tools they have. Even though there are statistically better mice out there, I can still beat those better mice users because I have more experience with mine. The longer you use a mouse or do practically anything in life, the better your muscle memory gets. If I throw you a ball and you've never caught a ball before, chances are you won't catch it. But by throwing a ball every day for the duration of a year, you will learn how to move every individual muscle in your fingers to make the perfect ball to catch the ball with. And by catching balls for another year, you don't even have to think about how to catch a ball anymore. It will all come over as natural. Here, catch this. By me using the exact same mouse for 4 years now, I've gotten so used to the shape, weight and friction that I don't have to think about how I have to move my hand to hit the next flick. But once again, statistically, the floatier one will always have the upper hand. So regarding the choice of your mouse, think about what stage you are at in your gaming career. Are you relatively new to serious competitive gaming? Put some money aside and get a super light mouse with some nice custom skates below it. If you are 4 years in and are still looking for an easy way to improve, I have to disappoint you that changing your mouse will most likely not do you any good. This rule of don't buy if you are really skilled with the peripheral you use also extends to all the other externals, but there are a couple exclusions. For keyboards, I generally don't recommend any keyboard that has a keypad or those weird macro keys on the side. Anything unnecessary that extends to the right if you are right-handed might heavily impact your performance. How? Well, because of our mouse. If you play on a comically large keyboard that potentially blocks your mouse's play space, you might just hit the keyboard when you have to flick to the left like your life depends on it. This is why most pro players have the keyboard small and often also slightly angled. You can only comfortably move your mouse so much, so make sure you don't hinder your right arm like that. There are ways to play around the issue of play space, like playing with a higher sensitivity, which I'll get to later, or by getting a bigger mousepad. Before we move over to mousepads though, I do want to point out that there are many different switches. Switches are the little pressure thingies which handle your inputs when you press down a key, and they are often in a particular color. There isn't really a type of switch that is statistically better than the other, but I personally prefer a reactive non-clicky switch, like the cherry red switches. But once again, some of you might like a bit more feedback feeling to your key presses, or a bit more resistance when you press them. In that case, do your research on what you think fits you better, and better yet, try them out yourself if you have a local tech store. Okay, mousepads. Honestly, I never felt the need to get a fancy glass mousepad or any of those non-flexible ones. I've been playing on a standard cheap Chinese mousepad that just flows my mouse nicely. Oh, have I mentioned it's big? Like 1 meter by 50 centimeters? Size does matter, boys, and the bigger the pad, the more freedom you have moving. Plus, it's nice to have your keyboard at the same height as your mouse when playing. And having your forearms rest on a more comfortable texture than plain wood is also nice. A hardware I always recommend upgrading, even if you've played for dozens of years on the same one, is the display. This is also the first and only external which requires good internals to get the most out of. I'm going to oversimplify this part a bit, but there are 5 aspects you have to keep in mind when picking a monitor. The refresh rate, resolution, panel type, size, and response time. The refresh rate is the most important one. Also known as Hertz, as in written terms Hz, it's the value that indicates how many frames per second can be max displayed. The screen you are watching this video on is most likely, unless you are a settled gamer, 60 Hz. This means that the max frames per second your screen can display is 60 frames per second. If you gain more in-game, like let's say 120 frames per second, you won't actually see 120 frames per second displayed. If your PC is able to consistently run your go-to game in more than 144 frames per second, I highly recommend getting a 144Hz monitor. And trust me, once you go 144, you will never want to go back to 60 Hz. 144Hz is coincidentally also the industry standard for gaming, but it isn't the highest. If you have the money, you can go up to 240 or even 360 refresh rate displays. Does that mean I automatically also recommend them? Yes, if you watch this video around 5 years after it was released. While 240Hz and 360Hz are definitely a step up, you can't get them in combination with the best options of the to-be-covered other 4 things. And even 144Hz in combination with, once again, the other things, is extremely hard to come by. I only managed to find one monitor that had all the things I wanted while not being extremely big, though even the one I use right now is a meter wide. Regarding the amount of hertz you need, I've played for 2 years on a 240Hz display after playing on 144Hz for many years prior, and even though it's definitely a step up and you can see the difference, it's not that necessary. Plus, running your game consistently on 240 frames per second on 4K resolution is quite demanding. 4K resolution? Yes, 4K. The average monitor you find in your local overpriced tech store is 1080p, also known as Full HD. You get 1920 pixels in width and 1080 pixels in height. Multiply them together and you have a total of 2,073,600 pixels pasted on your monitor. That is a lot and a good amount. But is it enough? You could say it is. But what if you play a game where your opponent might be really far away, like in Battle Royales? On 1080p, he would be 6 pixels big. But in 4K, he would instead be 24 pixels big, as objects in 4K are displayed 4 times more detailed in the better 3840 pixels by 2160 pixels resolution. That makes it a lot easier to figure out what your opponent is doing, where he is looking at, and if he is about to snipe you. Here is the first combination issue: 240Hz with 4K resolution. They do exist, though extremely pricey, often around the 1500 euros mark, but hidden on the store page, often not even mentioned at all in the description, is something that will impact your game clarity by a ton. The panel the display uses. This screen, for example, is a VA display type. This is not good. VA stands for vertical alignment, and how it works is super complicated. But they are indeed vertically aligned. What isn't complicated though is why it's not a good panel type. First of all, if you look at the screen from an angle, you might notice some image distortion or color shifting. Though, to be fair, that should not be too much of an issue because you usually sit in front of your computer. But there is a second of all. VA panels are known for ghosting and showing motion blur, especially when you play faster paced games. This means that when you flick your mouse, your game becomes almost impossible to read what's happening during the flick, resulting in possibly missing a camera or a person standing in a corner. I used to play on a 240Hz 1080p VA panel display, and while it was fast, I could notice the ghosting even when just moving my cursor on my desktop. So unless you have no other option, stay away from VA panels. Okay then, how about the second panel option? IPS. They have better color accuracy, allow you to game while sitting next to your PC due to the wider viewing angle, and also offer consistent image quality. Honestly, there isn't really anything truly bad about them. If you don't want to go overkill, go for IPS panel screens. But what if we want to be overkill and get the most out of our displays? Introducing OLED and QLED technology. OLED screens are amazing. When something is black on your screen, it is truly black. Like those pixels are basically turned off. No more grey darkness when playing games, but true black. In combination with the insane color reproduction and faster response times compared to the other panels, you get such beautiful visuals that it makes you want to play every game you ever played to see how much better it looks now. Like always, there is a downside. Or actually, 2 of them. Firstly, the price. OLED panels are incredibly expensive. And that makes the second downside a bigger issue. burn-in. I had a relatively cheap OLED TV as my PC display a couple of years ago, and after using it for a week, mind you that's just 7 days, it completely burnt in my taskbar into the bottom of the screen. Meaning no matter what application I had on, even when watching a movie, I could clearly see the burnt-in taskbar. Now, I hope I didn't scare you away from the OLED option here, because they are still really good panels. And truth to be told, the burn-in issue has been fixed almost perfectly. And almost all the OLED screens I know come with image cleaning sequences after you turn your screen off to prevent potential burn-in. I have an OLED screen right now and it shows 0 burn-in issues in the 5 months I extensively used it. And by that I mean multiple hours per day, working in Word documents or editing software that's open for hours on end, and accidentally leaving my PC on when I go to the store. I highly recommend OLED screens. But if OLED screens are this good, then how good must the last option for panels be? QLED. Well, for gaming, QLED isn't actually that good. You get even nicer, lifelike colors that even OLEDs can display, but with a hefty price. Your screen altogether doesn't get all that bright, meaning if you are gaming in a well-lit room, it's going to be hard to always see your screen properly. It also doesn't help that QLED technology is basically locked to Samsung TVs only. Hey, noticed how I only mentioned OLED and QLED TVs, not gaming monitors? That is not a writing mistake or pronunciation mistake. There is a really solid reason why. If we combine 240Hz, 4K resolution and OLED panels together, you will find exactly 0 monitors that fit the criteria. Seriously, they don't exist. And even if they do in hopefully the near future, I guarantee you that they will be at least 60 inches in size. If you don't get how big that is, the industry standard monitor is 27 inches diagonally, aka 68 centimeters. The 60-inch screens are a massive 1.5 meters big. But is it bad that screens are this big? No. And yes. Yes, because if your screen is big, you can't easily see your map, health, ammo counter, ability cooldown, score, and what else your game shows on the sides that easily. Meaning you have to look away from your crosshair to see them, which on its own means you aren't ready for that one guy suddenly swinging you. And no, because in first-person games you get to really focus on the middle of your screen. There is a reason why CSGO and Siege players almost sniff their monitors. If a pixel suddenly shows an enemy, it's quite tough for your eyes and brain to register it as fast as if suddenly your entire screen shows an enemy. Thus, what sweaty pros do is move closer to the pixel to make it easier for them to see when an enemy is shown. Well, guess what? If you have a big monitor that's 1080p, you still have the same number of pixels as a small monitor that is also 1080p. So instead of having to make out with your monitor every time you play, if you have a big screen, you can also sit at a normal distance and still benefit from the pixel spotting. So what is the right size for your monitor? That is, once again, up to preference. The benefit of a smaller monitor is that you don't need to train your peripheral view skill too much, as you always see everything at once. The downside is that spotting that pixel gets really hard due to its smaller size, making long-range engagements extra difficult. Okay, but what is small and what is big? You'll have to figure out what works for you yourself. Yes, yourself. Don't watch a tech reviewer to figure out what works. For some reason they always hate on bigger screens, but I personally love my 48-inch monitor. It's one of the smallest and only 144Hz 4K OLED gaming screens, that's a mouthful, that I could find. And I have no trouble dominating CSGO or Battle Royale matches because of its size. And to give you an idea, I'm sitting around an arm's length away from my screen. To give you a value for size measurement, I would say if your desk is deep enough, go for between 32 inches up to 48 inches. Finally, we have the response time. I don't think I will surprise you here if I say that smaller than 1 ms response time monitors are the way to go. And here we have it. 144Hz plus, 4K, OLED, 32 to 48 inches. And 1 ms or smaller reaction time. Oh yeah, good luck finding a monitor that fits all of this. This combination is basically the golden ticket. If you find it, you get the best display. At the end of this chapter, I will quickly recommend the externals that I use myself, and hopefully that will help you make your own decision. Phew, okay, that took a while to explain. Luckily the next ones are a lot shorter and simpler, like the simpler headphones. No matter what I will say here, there is always an audiophile that will disagree with me. Well, maybe aside from two things. 1. Anything that is praised as a gaming headphone, you probably shouldn't get. And 2. Studio headphones are the best gaming headphones. Why? How about 5 reasons? 1. The audio quality of studio headphones are universally better. 2. Studio headphones have neutral sound signatures, meaning they don't artificially exaggerate or enhance certain frequencies. Bass in gaming headphones. 3. Studio headphones have a wider soundstage, making it easier to figure out where the rapidly approaching footsteps are coming from. 4. Studio headphones are made for extended use and comfort during long recording sessions. Guess what? During gaming, you also wear them for a long time. And once again, studio headphones have universally better comfort. And 5. Versatility. Studio headphones are also usable for everything else in your audio needing life. I know the same argument can be made for gaming headphones, but if you walk in public with studio ones, no one will give you a weird look because you don't have a festival light setup around your head. There are 2 more externals that you could buy if you really wanted to have the best audio flowing into your eardrums. DACs and amps. DAC stands for Digital to Analog Converter, and they basically process and convert audio from code into a form that you can actually hear. Most headphones have this built in, but to be honest, the quality of those DACs are pretty bad. And if you really want to have the best audio quality, you have to get an external DAC. On top of that, if you want to have even cleaner sound quality, or your headphones require a lot of power to work like most high-end studio headphones, you also need an amplifier. What they do is increase the power and voltage of your audio signal, which results in reduced distortion in sounds and a really clean audio sound. If you decide to get or already have the best of the best studio headphone, I guarantee you that you need to combine it with a DAC amp setup to get the most out of your value. Microphone. You know how people often say speech is silver, silence is golden? Yeah, in the gaming world, the complete opposite is true. If you know how to communicate and be a strong in-game leader, you can easily beat the mechanically stronger team. Now, as opposed to the other externals we've gone through, your microphone doesn't need the best of the best to gain a performance with. Whether you say revive me in average quality or revive me in high quality, the message gets across. But if you are talking into a jet engine from the 80s, you might want to consider getting an upgrade. Finally, and I'm sorry this chapter is taking so long, we have the desk and chair. Do you love yourself? No? Well, start doing that. And while trying to fix your crippling depression, consider getting a nice and comfortable chair paired with a big and deep desk. Your back is important, and investing an extra $50 or $100 in a better chair than you would originally goes a long way if you spend a good amount of time behind your beautiful 4K OLED screen. Don't limit and hurt yourself by playing on an annoying primary school table. Invest in yourself and your passion, and you will find an increase in your performance. I am confident enough to say that I promise you that. Okay, now before we move over to the real grindy part of getting good in your game, I want to briefly mention the externals I use myself that I am 100% convinced in that they will make you play better. Mouse, the Logitech G Pro Superlight. It's like the G Pro that I use myself, but lighter. Keyboard, the Ducky One 3 Mini Red Cherry. It's small, feels nice to use, and has the red cherry switches. Mousepad. This one because it's really big and it's really cheap. Display, the LG 48G monitor. 144Hz, 4K, OLED, 48 inches, and 0.1 ms reaction time. Only consider getting this one if you have a deep enough desk. Headphones. The Biodynamic DT1990 Pro. The audio quality is godly. I actually don't have this one anymore as I dropped it in water a while back, but man, do I miss it. Microphone. Just use whatever you can find. Nothing nowadays is plain bad. But if you are wondering what I use for my recording, it's the Shure SM7B. Finally, for the desk and chair, Make your own desk. Make it big, make it juicy. It's a lot cheaper than buying one online. Plus, you can fully customize it. And for the chair, go to your local IKEA and see what fits. I put a link to most of those products in the description, so if you want to take the safe route and just take what I have, consider buying them through my affiliate links. You indirectly also support the channel, so thank you very much. Alright, with all this hardware, externals and money business done, time to get serious. With or without the best hardware, in the end, it's the skills that makes the biggest difference between a good and a bad player. Now, how am I going to help you get good in your go-to game without knowing what that game actually is? Good question, but I got an even better answer. The bigger picture. To get good in FPS games, you need to master flicking, tracking, recoil control, movement, crosshair placement, and whatnot. To get good in racing games, you need to master the maps, know what lines to take to have the fastest laps, know how to anticipate nearby drivers, and whatnot. To be the best in mobile games, you need to fully understand every aspect of your character and your opponent, have outstanding map awareness, know when to make what decision and what not. Let me ask you a question. Who is going to win this duel? The average Joe with wall hacks? Or the sweaty 14-year-old with insane skills? Well, the hacking Joe, because he knows where you will go. And since he is an average Joe and not a crappy Joe, he knows how to moderately play and position himself in-game, resulting in combination with the constant information stream through his X-ray vision. He will, without a doubt, absolutely smash that kid. Don't take that out of context, by the way. Information is everything. So before we can dive into more specific skills, we need to deal with the Big Daddy. I wasn't kidding when I said information is everything. Imagine you could read your opponent's mind. You would know what he plans to do next, where he thinks of falling back to, and how he is going to try to beat you. If you could read minds, you would be a menace to play chess or any other strategy game against. Luckily for everyone, our technology isn't advanced enough just yet where people can do that. But what if we can still do that without needing any technology at all? Hear me out. We are playing a shooter game. The guy is standing here and we throw a bomb here. Where is he going to move to next? To the left, correct. He doesn't want to get killed. Another scenario. The guy is standing here, we start to shoot at him and he panics. Where is he going to move to next? To the right, correct. This doesn't only apply to FPS games, by the way. Once again, let's take Rocket League as an example. The guy is driving here, I'm about to kick the ball, what is he going to do? He is going to jump in front of it. Leak of toxicity. I'm throwing an area denial here and here, so what does he do? He will move over there. This idea of reading your opponent and taking a guess where he moves to next is basically how high-level chess works. You try to understand what your opponent does and capitalize on you knowing what he is going to do next. If because of our bomb he has to move to the left, and we know that, we will enter this engagement with full confidence. We ready ourselves to focus on our crosshair placement and flick onto his head, track him moving to the left, recoil control our gun properly to stay on target, and as a cherry on top, we also start randomly moving left and right to make ourselves a harder target to hit than usual. Of course, we can do that without reading his mind as well, but this just makes it so much easier. This mind-reading skill doesn't only extend to direct engagements though. An arguably even stronger aspect of reading minds is during the before phase. Let's whip up another example. We are playing Valorant. I know that is a very unlikely scenario, but it could happen. And luck has it, we are playing on Fracture against this lineup. Let's have a look at who we are playing against. Jett, Reyna, Brimstone, Chamber and Killjoy. Oh, Killjoy, one of the characters that isn't so versatile, which means we can guess what she is going to do. Firstly, we know her abilities. She has a turret, she has 2 area denial abilities, a bot that alerts when someone walks near it, and an ultimate that completely denies anyone from standing in its huge range. Oh, and her ultimate is also ready to be used. I am going to predict what is most likely going to happen. Killjoy is going to walk to B, place her alarm bot here, place her turret here, and place her ultimate here. Then she will either stay back and throw her area denial abilities with lineups to deny the plant from afar, Or if we are in lower elo, she will just walk to the spike and hide them around it manually. That is what Killjoy is going to do. How do I know? Well, it's the easiest attack scenario for our opponents. And it's what I would do. Attacking A with her ultimate just doesn't work to the same extent. Bombsite B is literally made for Killjoy to fully take. Guessing and predicting what is going to happen next also extends to all the other characters. Chamber, he is going to try to get a free pick on bombsite A or attack from the other side of bombsite B, while Jet and Reyna push side directly, where in this case Reyna will try to blind us when they push in, and Jet will dash deep in either a smoke or close to the box here to try to kill the guy that is holding from here. Brimstone will do two things. He will throw a stim beacon that is going to buff his entering teammates, making them even harder to kill, and he will deploy smokes here, here and here to cut off the guys on site from the guys that are trying to help them from spawn. Then he will join Killjoy in the back and play lineups as well, which makes it even harder for the defenders to win this round. This predicting skill is not just a Valorant thing, by the way. I can do the exact same thing in all the other games I have experience in. Siege, we are playing Villa. They have an Ashe and our bomb site is on the second floor. Ashe will either be normal and help her team, or she will do what 99% of all other Ashe players do and sneak around to get a free pick on a roaming defender. What is the easiest place to sneak in from? The complete opposite side of the map, meaning the basement. And if she doesn't want to make a lot of sound entering, she won't be using any explosives to get in. So she will go through this door and then crouch walk her way to the bomb site. Okay, so knowing this, right? We should probably sit in this room and wait for her to enter. Surprisingly, that doesn't work. Even though we perfectly read her actions. How is that possible? Just because we read minds doesn't mean they do not. When people say you learn most from your mistakes, they aren't wrong. Our crouch-walking Ashe player didn't have a sudden impulse to abandon her team and enter all solo from the other side. She has obviously done it before, and that means she obviously has died in this room and on her way to the bomb site many times before as well. Every time she died along this path, she learned from her mistake, and with every mistake made, her plan becomes more and more foolproof. I know for a fact that this is how it works, cause I am this Ashe player. I play like this all the time. It's extremely easy to kill off stragglers that way. But I also know that just hitting the door and going in is suicide. So what can I do? I pre-place my camera in this room during the prep phase, so I know that there's no one here. Because I know that it's very likely that the enemy knows what I am going to do. Okay, now try to pay attention, because this is going to get real juicy real fast. What if he knows that I know that he knows that I'm going to enter through this door? He will no longer sit in this room, but rather in the next room over, and then he's just going to wait for me to break the barricade, where he will then swing and try to kill me. But in return, because I died to it before, I know that he knows that I know that he knows. See? Now it gets really complicated. And that is the art of high-level information playstyles. Whoever can read the most steps ahead has the upper hand in the match. So the next time you die to something, instead of summoning Satan with the amount of hate you're about to slur into the match, think about how and why you died, so that the next time you will get your sweet revenge on your opponent. And that feels a lot better than summoning the devil. Trust me, I tried it before. And just like this scenario here in Siege and the one in Valorant, there are literally countless scenarios where reading your opponent's mind in the before phase can get you the W. Hell, even during the character reveal screen that most games have, you can already guess who is going to do what. Which means instead of alt-tabbing and watching a YouTube video while your game loads, which you might be doing now, shame on you, you should instead, in your head, already think about how you are going to play around your opponent. Isn't this information skill just beautiful? Let me propose something unheard of. What if we could share that information with your teammates? Gosh, that would be handy. Behind you! Thanks, mate. If there is one thing I learned from my wife's boyfriend, it's that sharing is caring. And he's got a point. Imagine if instead of 5 individuals versus 5 individuals, it was a team versus 5 individuals. That would be a pretty simple match, wouldn't it? The problem is, how do we get these 5 numbnuts to work together to be a proper team? Straight off the bat, sometimes you can't. In the majority of the games I played, there was always one or two guys that straight up just refused to work together and only used their mics to throw racial slurs at people. In this scenario, there is nothing we can do about it. But in all other cases, there is a good chance we can still make this a team. How? First of all, charisma. Think about it. What are you more likely to respond to? Is it, "Hello team?" Or, "What's up beautiful gamers, you guys ready to absolutely devour that slice of bread today?" This scenario is the exact same as me starting this video with "Hello and welcome to another Arch video," instead of spending a full day on getting that Inferno skit going. Being unique and slightly charismatic helps me get your attention and to confirm to you that this is just not another one of those hour-long video essays where the guy only shows gameplay footage while reading a book out loud. No, this video is a good one. And that charismatic teammate those 4 randoms just queued up with is a good one as well. It's not like your teammates will suddenly cheer up and work together with you for the entirety of the match. But you did break the ice, and by doing so, made your teammates more likely to call things out. And that one simple callout screaming that he's behind you is already enough to win the round. And that is enough to make a difference in a match. Okay, so now that everyone's throat is oiled up, it's time to actually use that bad boy. Again, don't take that out of context. How do we speak to our teammates? Well, we are not going to tell them how to play unless absolutely necessary. Backseat gaming is legitimately annoying and only does more harm than good. Let's bring up the Siege basement example again. What if suddenly someone screamed in the ears of the Ashe player that he should enter through this wall instead of the usual door? That would mean we throw him into a completely new scenario where he has no clue what to do. Where does he pre-fire? Where is someone most likely going to play? Where can I die from? The reason why people and this Ashe player goes through this door specifically is because it usually works out for them. If it doesn't, that sucks, but it is what it is. Speaking of things that suck, imagine that you make a mistake. I know, very unlikely. You would be slightly frustrated because you know that you should have won that scenario, but, you know, timing isn't always on your side. Either way, you will stay cool and try again better next round. But then, Mr. Bob Gross screams at you, "Of course you die first! What are you doing? How could you make that mistake? You are such a failure, you little..." Okay then, that's not completely user-friendly. Personally, when people throw slurs at me, I only get more passionate to win to show this very nice person that I am so much better than him. So his verbal abuse only stimulates me. I am not the norm. Don't resort to throwing your negativity and frustrations to someone who's doing poorly. Or even better, don't be negative at all. You are playing a game, and even though it might be competitive, you still want to have fun, right? Keep your head cool and your mic cool as well for that matter. Okay, so we know what not to do, but what do we do? Well, we relay information that is important, and we do it quickly and precisely. My opponent is gone, I don't know where he went. Trap on aviator door and I'm going to push the back corner, okay? Are perfectly good callouts. And a little tip, an arch tip if you would like. It's easier to kill your opponent when you have someone next to you than if you would be alone. Ask someone to refrag you or double peek an angle. And if you really want to be a pro, and this is something I learned way too late, is that you should count down. Flashing in 3, 2, 1. Let's swing on 3. 1, 2, 3. Counting up or down is perfect to sync up your actions together with your team. And especially in higher ranks, team play really does make the difference. A final tip I would like to give regarding the voices in your head. Be nice to them. If someone clutches around or makes a sick play, tell them they did well. Nothing feels better than getting a compliment, especially from a stranger. There is literally not a single reason to not give out a compliment. Because of your compliment, they will get into a higher mood, which means they will feel a lot more confident, and that results in them playing a lot better. Just give it a try, it doesn't hurt. Okay, switching to the next chapter on 3. 1, 2, 3. Once you start to understand the information game, I would say you got your game already nicely ironed out. But unfortunately, you still have to line up your shots to execute all that big brain thinking work. The first and most important thing you have to train is your crosshair placement skill. Placing your crosshair skillfully means making your game easy. And by the way, this isn't only tied in FPS games. Any game out there where accuracy and speed of acquiring targets is detrimental to winning rounds heavily benefits from this skill. Check out this completely original scenario. We are in a 1v1, I know, shocker. And your opponent is stuck in a corner and we have a gun that deals 40 damage per hit. And because we are very smart, we know that a headshot can instantly kill him. Meaning we should probably go for that headshot. Okay, tell me, where is his head right now? It's roughly around here, so around this line. This line is called the head level. And let me tell you, this one is just so snortable. Whether our enemy swings us fast, average, slow, or only peeks a little bit, he will be stuck on this head level line. So all we have to do when that happens is move our crosshair to the left. Isn't that just dirt easy? Well, let me tell you, we can make it even easier for ourselves. Instead of aiming at the wall, let's aim at the first possible spot where we can see him from. So just around this corner. If he swings us slowly or only peeks a little, all we have to do to kill him is to tap the left mouse button. Or if you are confident that he is going to swing big, put your crosshair a bit further away from the ball, so you can give your reaction time the chance to perfectly time as a rifle, resulting in, once again, that beautiful one tap. In theory, this doesn't sound that hard to master, but trust me, staying consistently on head level is not an easy task, especially when you start to flick left and right faster and faster. Speaking of flicking, you might think that that is a really important skill to grind out, but in reality it's not that important. Flicking is more like a failsafe than a top priority skill. If your crosshair placement is off, or you just can't for sure know if he's behind box A or B, you will be required to flick to fix your mistake. Aside from those scenarios though, you only really need to flick from crosshair placement spot to crosshair placement spot, which doesn't really require you to be super accurate, to be honest. Aggressively flicking is more like a big show-off thing, and I can't lie. Seeing someone hit a nasty flick surely is incredible. But getting sick Twitter clips or YouTube highlight reels doesn't equal better performance. Or does it? No, it doesn't. Another important skill is tracking. Even if you perfectly place your crosshair on where your opponent comes from, timing that click or killing him in one hit isn't always possible. In that case, it's up to your tracking skill to finish the race. Tracking is one of the skills that is impossible to perfectly do. Seriously, if you are watching this video on your laptop or PC and you have a mouse, try to always keep your mouse on the circle, okay? Alright, here we go. 3, 2, 1, good luck. Okay, you are surprisingly not making any mistakes. Keep it up, I guess. You know, maybe it isn't that hard to perfectly Ooh, almost got you there, didn't I? Luckily, you definitely didn't fail just now, and you are still trying to do the exercise. So let's and you're out. There is no way, I don't care what you will comment, you cannot track this. And that is exactly the problem with tracking targets. If they do any sudden movements you don't expect, you are no longer on target anymore. That's fine. Being a pro at tracking isn't just being good at staying on target. It's also being able to quickly recover from your tracking mistake. In the end, it's all about who stays on the opponent's head longer than the other. Which, if you play FPS games, you are going to find a lot harder than in other non-FPS games. Because in this game, you also have to control your recoil, which, especially in games like CSGO and Valorant, is, kind of impossible. Okay, so look down for a second and look at your keyboard. Do you see your A and D button? Fun fact, if you press D and A in random intervals, your opponent will no longer absolutely dunk on you. A not so fun fact is that when you do this, tracking becomes even harder, as you have to compensate not only for your gun's irrational behavior, but also for your own random movement, while tracking the ADHD Fortnite kid. Things like this really makes the skill ceiling extremely high in games, but that's the charm. To be the best, you have to give it all and train like your life depends on it. And if you do it long and good enough, there is money to be made in the professional but also the semi-professional scene. As long as the game developers not go radio silent on you for a month, resulting in your regional tournament shutting down, Ubisoft! The final episode of this one video trilogy is about all the remaining things that didn't really fit into the chapters mentioned before. Nonetheless, they are still really important. Most games have settings ranging from ultra to low or off. A rule of thumb when changing these settings is that low is often better for visibility and clarity. In particular, you want to turn off or put the shadow settings on low to spot enemies a lot easier. Though, be careful. For example in Siege, while turning off the shadows gives you more visibility, in return you can no longer see your opponent's shadow, which means you wouldn't be able to see him like I do here. Make sure to carefully test every single setting to see what gives you the most visibility, and be expected to trade some beauty for it. What is the best sensitivity to play on? I'm sure you had this question at least once. And to that question is once again many answers depending on your preference. The true sensitivity that you have in-game depends on two values: your mouse's DPI and your in-game sensitivity. DPI stands for dots per inch, and the higher the value, the faster your cursor will move across your screen. A lot of mice are advertised with up to 32,000 DPI possible, which surely means the higher the better, right? Kind of. The lower the DPI, the less chance of your mouse skipping pixels when reading your mouse movements, thus providing a smoother mouse experience. As long as you stay within, I would say 400 DPI to max 1600 DPI, you don't have to worry about any of that. Whatever DPI you choose is the base value that gets multiplied by your in-game sensitivity setting. If in-game your sensitivity is 2.4, it takes your DPI and multiplies it by 2.4, resulting in probably a really fast sensitivity. And is fast good? Once again, depends on you. A rule of thumb in FPS games is that you should always be able to do a 360 from your mouse's starting position. So 180 degrees to the left and 180 degrees to the right. How much you need to move to reach that 360 depends on you and your mousepad in your desk space. Personally, I love going for a lower DPI and in-game settings over high due to you having basically an easier time. If I project our mouse's movement in raw data and our in-game crosshair and enemy on the screen, it's going to be a lot easier to understand why low is generally better. In most FPS games, accuracy is key, aka hit head. The head is a small target, and while the distance to the target on your screen is always the same no matter the sensitivity, the distance you need to move your mouse in real life is not. If your total sensitivity is high, this is what the raw data looks like, where the circle is his head. Looks good, but watch this. The lower the sense, the further we have to move our mouse. But also the bigger the target area, meaning more room for mistakes. This is why I recommend going for lower sensitivities. But how low should I go? I'm not going to say it, you know what you should do. If you are wondering what my sensitivity is, in Counter-Strike terms, it's 800 DPI and 1.0 sensitivity. Oh, and while you try this out, check the different vibe you get when you play 100 DPI with an 8.0 sensitivity. It really shows the importance of balancing your DPI with sense. The single most important thing that I can tell you in this video is that you need to have a good mentality. Have fun in the game you play and don't get tilted over the slightest thing. It's not worth your energy and passion. And accept that sometimes you just don't have your day, which is completely fine. Even champions stumble. Man, getting good in games really isn't that easy, is it? Though, that is maybe why we all like gaming so much. Either way, there are people who make things happen. There are people who watch things happen. And there are people who wonder what happened. To be successful, you need to be a person who makes things happen. Start by applying the basics, which will most likely be crosshair placement. And then, slowly expand on focusing on the other things till it all comes naturally. And even if you don't want to specifically focus on those things, don't worry. If you are still watching this video, you have heard what I said, so somewhere in that brain of yours, you know what you should be doing. And the more you play, the more you will subconsciously improve and apply those techniques to rank up. And I really hope you will experience the awesome feeling of playing national online tournaments, or offline LANs and ultimately getting sponsored by brands and all, while playing under a professional organization. I kinda miss those times, if I'm allowed to be honest. But hey, I guess being a YouTuber isn't a bad second option. But that's about it for now. Rome wasn't built in one day, and a pro player's career wasn't either. Thank you so much for watching this extra lengthy video, and like always, keep going. Alright, Patreon shoutouts, here we go. Richard F, a man that pays respect all the time. Bunkered, someone who really likes to stay in his bunker. David Dumitrascu, who has the easiest name ever. Blue E68, because Green E68 was already taken. And Maka 301, the successor of the other Maka 300. If you want to get yourself a shoutout or be featured in the intro of the video, consider supporting me on Patreon. See you next time.